Good afternoon, my friends. This is Paul, and today I'm going to be reviewing to you Battleship for the Nintendo Switch, not to be confused with the Wii game that was based on the movie that was based on the board game. This is entirely based on Hasbro's classic board game masterpiece, in which two players are given a set of ships of varying sizes. They get to place them on their side of the board, while the opponent does the same on the other side. And your objective is to guess where your opponent placed the ships. You give a coordinate, and then your opponent responds with either hit or miss. Or, in the case of what my friends and I used to do back in the day, we'd respond with a pun. Like if my best friend said, "I won," I'd say, "No, you didn't, you missed." And the puns just got cornier and cornier as we went along, but that also added to the charm when you're basically just doing a game of Guess Who the whole time. So there's two modes that you can play in this Switch version. You can play the classic game where you have a 10 by 10 grid and you just guess where your opponents hid their ships. It's not as wildly crazy as you might imagine, because there's a certain amount of logical reasoning that you can use to have process of elimination in figuring out where your opponents wouldn't put their ships. You also have a display of what shape all of their ships are. So say, for example, you took out all of the two-way ships, then you can be like, okay, well, it's only logically possible for a four-way ship to be placed in this configuration. So at first it may seem like wild guesswork, but eventually it becomes a more systematic approach. Now, the real fun comes when you play the enhanced mode, which is known as commander mode, and this is where choosing different characters really comes in handy, because you have three special abilities that are universal between the commanders that use energy points. These can range from a sonar, which basically turns the game into Minesweeper, where if you've missed a shot, you can place a sonar on that missed piece to see how many hits you can get from a diagonal or cross perspective. So this helps you reason out the position of the ships even further. There's also a mine, which literally turns the game into Minesweeper, where if your opponent guesses a space where you put a mine, then you'll get 2 free hits at random on the board. Finally, there's the bomb, which allows you to attack in a 4x4 grid, therefore allowing you to get potentially multiple shots at a time. Finally, the fourth skill is a special ability that's unique to each character. These usually cost way more energy points than the regular abilities, but usually it's worth saving your points because these can be real showstoppers. Thankfully, it's easier to save your points than you would think, because while you do get 2 at the start of your turn, you also get 1 for every time your opponent hits one of your ships. So you could say this is kind of like a revenge meter. Like if your opponent hits your ships too much, you come back with a super powerful special ability, and then you can completely turn the tables on them. There are 3 difficulty modes: easy, medium, and hard, and I feel like the difficulty balance is pretty well done. On hard mode, they seem to be cheating quite a lot, as I had no idea how they were able to predict the locations of my ships 2 times in a row, but maybe that's just because they have a special kind of AI reasoning that my human brain isn't capable of detecting. I don't know. There are lots of things to unlock in Battleship. Probably because Hasbro figured that people would get bored if all they did was just play a board game. No pun intended. They give you little missions that you can accomplish. They come 3 at a time, so you don't have to be overwhelmed with a huge checklist like most games with achievements do. And these range from unlocking new characters and new boards, although that's pretty much the extent of the unlockables from my experience. The new boards mostly just change the background, although when you're playing in commander mode, this also can give you an option for a different shape of the map. This doesn't really correlate with the arena that you're fighting in, so it's really all just a matter of taste. Although, if you don't like all these new board shapes, you can opt to play the new commander mode in the classic 10 by 10 grid that the original Battleship was designed for. You can also play this game with friends or online. Since I'm not going to pay for Nintendo's ridiculous online service, I chose not to test that. Playing with friends, on the other hand, is a little bit more complicated than I would have liked, because you have to get a separate smartphone app just to do it. I don't know, could they not get 2 Switches together? Maybe they wanted to save money by not forcing you to buy 2 copies, Or maybe they were afraid that if you played by share a Switch, then maybe one person would cheat and look at each other's screen. I mean, technically, you could do that in the original Battleship if you just stole someone's board. So I don't know what they're so panicked about. I feel like people, if you're playing a video game version of a board game, you should be allowed to play it how you want. So suffice to say, I couldn't test that either because I do not have a smartphone. Although I'm sure one of these days, if my best friend comes over and I say, hey, you want to play Battleship? He'll probably say, nah, I'll just play the regular board game instead. So, that begs the question of, if you're a huge fan of Hasbro's classic, like I am, is it worth spending the $4, if this game is on sale, to get a video game adaptation? I would say it really depends on how much you like the music and if you really want to play the special mode. If you're a huge fan of the original game and don't care for all these new gimmicks and power-ups, then I'd say just get the board game. You're not really missing out on much, except for a fairly epic score and some cool HD rumble effects when your ships get hit. However, I would also say that you don't necessarily need this version if you only have the board game either, because theoretically, you could just look at all of the things I'm doing and then write them down on a piece of paper and just take that into consideration as additional rules, which most board games tend to do, especially if they're made by Hasbro, even within their original manuals. So technically this board game iteration, or this video game iteration, is completely unnecessary, but maybe a little bit more convenient if you don't have anyone to play it with, as the original game only supported 2 players or more, whereas this video game gives you the option to play against AI computer opponents, which may or may not be more fun depending on how much of a fan you are of the opponent hardly emoting at all. There's no voice acting, and while the music is cool, it's only one track that just continually loops. Also, when you're playing in handheld mode, sometimes the music will randomly turn off or go on and out in quality. This is a Ubisoft game, so of course there's going to be some kind of glitch even in a game this simplistic. So I would recommend playing it on the TV if you can, although maybe that was just a temporary glitch, because usually when I reset the game, the glitch would stop. But I don't know how you could mess up Battleship. That seems like the game where you wouldn't have glitches, but yet somehow Ubisoft managed to mess that up. Don't know how, but it happened. So with that, if it's on sale, I think this is absolutely worth a buy if you're in the single player game. And maybe if you've paid for Nintendo Switch Online and you want to play Battleship online with a stranger, that could also be worth it. But if you have friends to play with and you'd rather save on some money, you'd be better off just sticking to the board game. You can find it pretty much anywhere now. So, since this game did come out in 2020, I am going to give it a solid 17 out of 20. Now that may seem a little bit inflated to some of you because you may be like, I'm just going to play the board game. But from my personal opinion, it was a blast being able to switch between commanders and boards and try to figure out how the AI was thinking so that I could try to outwit them. And so overall, I felt like it was a good usage of my dollars, especially because this was on sale and I got it for only $4 when it's usually priced at 20. To my knowledge, there also isn't a physical version, but maybe that's because I primarily go by GameFly. So prepare to have a little bit of extra space on your Switch's hard drive if you want to get this game. With that, thank you very much for watching. If you have any comments, questions, concerns, and critiques, etc., please let me know in the comment section. And until the next time, keep the faith, stay epic, God bless, and let's hope there's more amazing board game adaptations like this. Bye!